Hey everybody! I'm here with another episode of Bible Q&A. The question for this video is, why don't people question religious traditions? There are actually several reasons I think people might not want to question religious traditions. The first is that in many church denominations, traditions are as valid as scripture. These churches call them sacred tradition, and there are a few verses in the Bible they use to support this doctrine. For example, Paul told the Thessalonians, "Therefore, brethren, stand fast, and hold the traditions which ye have been taught, whether by word or our epistle." 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 15. So there's the Bible, and there's customs passed down by pastors. Paul even advised people to stay away from those who didn't follow church traditions, according to 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 2. The problem is, from time to time, practices can pop up that go against scripture. Traditions can be adopted from pagan neighbors, misunderstandings of biblical texts, or even the needs of a particular church, like the doctrine of indulgences, used to help pay for the construction of cathedrals in the Middle Ages. Jesus also faced a religious institution that had adopted many extra-biblical teachings, and he rebuked the Pharisees for developing these traditions here. "Ye hypocrites! Well did Isaiah prophesy of you, saying, This people draweth nigh unto me with their mouth, and honoureth me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. But in vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men." Matthew 15, verses 7 to 9. You can't promise to give your parents something and then give it to the church, an action that violates several of the 10 Commandments, and yet the Pharisees adopted it so they could get more money. That's why it's important to test traditions from time to time to see if they still have a scriptural basis. Paul also told the Thessalonians, "Prove all things, hold fast that which is good." 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 21. It was only that which is good that the Thessalonians could stand by. But if tradition is considered sacred, as is the case in several church denominations, then it can't undergo this process because that would be considered sacrilegious. Another reason people don't question religious traditions is because some of them do have a few verses that support them. For example, Jesus talked about hellfire in Matthew chapter 5, verse 22, and James said that hellfire can burn the tongue, or the words we say, in James chapter 3, verse 6. And of course, there's the story of Lazarus and the rich man, where the rich man appears to be burning in hell. However, if we look at all the verses that discuss a particular topic, and a few seem to go against it, then we might have to reconsider our beliefs. For example, if hell is a place that is burning with fire, then how could it be thrown into the lake of fire in Revelation chapter 20, verse 14? "And death and hell were cast into the lake of fire." This is the second death. Hell was merely the KJV's translation of Gehenna, a metaphor for destruction based on a place where children were sacrificed by burning, which obviously wouldn't have been endless, and Hades, a Greek term for the underworld, where there wasn't any fire at all. The third reason people don't question religious traditions is because there aren't any verses that oppose it, even if there aren't any verses that support it either. For example, there isn't a verse that supports infant baptism, but there's also no verse that explicitly condemns it. However, there are verses that support an alternative view of baptism, so those should influence our view of infant baptism. The first is that baptism was mostly done through submersion, as evidenced by John chapter 3, verse 23. And John also was baptizing in Aenon near to Salem, because there was much water there, and they came and were baptized. The only reason he needed a lot of water was because he wanted to submerge the people he baptized, and not simply sprinkle water on them. Also, baptism was mainly for people who wanted to consciously convert to Christianity. In Acts chapter 8, verses 36 to 37, before baptizing the Ethiopian eunuch, Philip asked him if he believed fully in Jesus Christ, and the eunuch answered that Jesus was the Son of God. Naturally, infants aren't able to make such a firm statement of belief. The final reason people don't question religious traditions is that to do so means you're questioning those who pass them down to you, and many don't feel that they have the authority to do that. In John chapter 4, verse 12, the Samaritan woman challenged Jesus' claim that he was the source of living water by referring to the customs passed down from Jacob. How could one random person claim he had a better tradition than her ancestors? And of course, insisting on an alternate doctrine than that taught by the church can get you excommunicated or shunned by the community, and many aren't willing to risk losing their community to question the church. For example, in John chapter 9 verse 22, the parents of the blind man were unwilling to tell the Pharisees who cured their son, because the Pharisees threatened to excommunicate anyone who said that Jesus was the Messiah. However, in order to spread the truth, it's important to be willing to challenge falsehood, whether it's among brethren or among the church elite. Paul did this himself, scolding Peter for separating himself from Gentiles to please the Jews in Galatians chapter 2 verses 11 to 14. Peter was only doing this to avoid persecution from Jews who insisted on circumcision, according to Galatians chapter 6 verse 12. He advised other Christians to adopt this attitude, to prevent foreign traditions from going unchallenged and weakening people's faith. He told Titus, "Wherefore rebuke them sharply, that they may be sound in the faith, not giving heed to Jewish fables and commandments of men, that turn from the truth." Titus chapter 1 verses 13 to 14. That way, traditions can be tested and analyzed until only the most biblical customs are accepted. And that's a wrap for this episode of Bible Q&A. Why don't people question religious traditions? It's because many people consider them sacred, certain customs have some biblical proof, other customs haven't been explicitly proven false, and you can sometimes be excommunicated for challenging the church's doctrines. Thank you for listening! Don't forget to like and subscribe!